Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kristen Crandall, and I work here with PolicyMap, and I appreciate you all attending today and taking some time out of your day to learn about how PolicyMap is used by CDFIs. Just a little housekeeping before we get into the presentation. Just as most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with how GoToWebinar works, but you're all currently muted. So we definitely encourage lots of questions. And if you could just please type those into the control panel, GoToWebinar, that would be great. And we will have a Q&A period at the end, but also may potentially answer questions during the presentation as it makes sense. So please do type those in as you have them. And with that, let's just go to the quick agenda here for the webinar. I'm just going to give a little bit of introduction and background about PolicyMap for anyone who's not familiar, and then we'll provide an overview of the tool as well. Then my colleague Phil Vu, who's here with me, is going to show you how the most typical use case of how CDFIs are using PolicyMap for their NMTC applications and analysis. And then he'll be handing it back to me to show you an example of how PolicyMap is used by CDFIs for more internal use and to kind of focus your lending and look at your target market and consider potential projects. And then I'll show you an example of how CDFIs have used PolicyMap to communicate their work to the public. And if there's enough time, then we will either show a sneak preview of the new platform that we have coming around the pike, or potentially just provide some highlights of how the platform will be different. I would, along those lines, just add that I'm happy to set up a trial access for you and any colleagues who are interested in checking PolicyMap out on your own after. So just keep that in mind, that you can shoot me an email. I'll provide my email at the end. So if we can set the trial access up. And then also, I just mentioned, along with the platform upgrade, that we will be offering at the end of this year. We actually have a discount right now that I mentioned in the email to everyone, where any CDFIs that purchase a subscription to PolicyMap for 2020 will be providing the rest of 2019 for you for free. It's just a little kind of teaser discount that we're providing. So that would give you access for 15 months for the price of 12. So I'm happy to talk about that more after, but just wanted to say that up front. And then at the end of the presentation, obviously, as I mentioned, we'll be doing Q&A. So just in terms of PolicyMap, I'll give you a little bit of background. So a lot of CDFIs are familiar with PolicyMap already since we grew out of a CDFI ourselves. We were created by the Reinvestment Fund, and one of the larger CDFIs that is based here in Philadelphia, but lends throughout the Mid-Atlantic and increasingly in other parts of the country as well. And they created PolicyMap originally a little over 10 years ago for internal use, to kind of do some of the things that we'll talk about today, to be able to lend strategically, look at potential investments and be able to consider, how to be strategic and what's really going to move the needle in an area, and actually be able to track the kind of progress and outcomes of the work that they're doing. And so, because we're built by a CDFI, we have a lot of the data that's most relevant to community development, in terms of demographics, income, poverty, NMTC data, that type of thing. And then we've also since grown the amount of data we have in some other areas, health in particular, which I know is also of interest to CDFIs as the worlds of community development and health kind of merge and are being, everyone's trying to tackle health and understand that as well. So you'll see a lot of data. Even if you've looked at PolicyMap before, you'll see a lot of new data that you maybe didn't see if you haven't used the tool for a few years. And yes, I think that about covers the background. So we're now used by not just CDFIs, but also a lot of other different types of nonprofits and foundations, government, state, local, federal government agencies. Banks use PolicyMap for their CRA lending, and we're having a lot of growing use in the health field from public health departments and that type of thing as well. We also have a lot of almost 150 universities that have licenses as well. So that's a little bit of background about PolicyMap, but again, since we're from the CDFI world, a lot of you are probably already familiar. So to turn it over to PolicyMap here, this is the current interface for which, again, some of you maybe have seen it before, but if it's been a while, you might not quite recognize it. And just a quick overview for anyone who's not familiar of the kind of features that are available. I'm, given time today, will not be giving you kind of a full demo of everything in PolicyMap. Be happy to set up a separate demo to go into more detail and talk about your specific use cases with your CDFI if you contact me after. But today we'll just kind of walk through some of the key things that CDFIs tend to use. But just to give you a quick idea of what is available, this is the maps page, so you can generate maps here, which I'll show you an example of. You can print maps, you can download our data, which we'll be showing you. You can create target areas down here where it says custom regions. So I can show you an example of that. All of these menus are filled with data. But then there's also these other features. So you can create tables, you can create reports. We have 4 different reports that are available. I'll show you an example of one of them today, the community profile report, but there's also a health report, as well as a rental housing report and a HMDA lending report. Those are available with the subscriptions. There's 3-layer maps. So this is the part of the tool that helps you identify areas that meet multiple criteria. And so if you wanted to identify an area that is a new market tax credit eligible and is an opportunity zone designated tract and has it meets some other type of metric that your CDFI is focused on, you can use the tool to identify those types of areas. And then there's a data loader. This is a self-service feature. So with this, anyone that has access can upload their own spreadsheet of address level data, and that will incorporate into the tool so that you can look at your data in relation to all the other data in the tool. So the most common use case here for CDFIs is to upload your portfolio data and layer it on top of the other data in the tool, which Phil will be showing you with the new market tax credit example. But those are the kind of main features that are available. And these are the data menus. So you'll see when you click on one of the menus, just to give you a quick overview of how these work. So this is housing. You'll see when you scroll through that the menus keep spanning out. So that just gives you an idea of exactly how much data is in each of these menus. And we have our own data team, which I actually used to work on for a number of years, that spends all their time keeping the data in the application as up to date as possible from the many different sources. So that covers almost 150 different sources at this point. And the majority of data is from publicly available federal sources. So, CDFI Fund, the census, BLS, USDA, HUD, the CDC, FEMA, et cetera. But we also license data from vendors in areas where it doesn't exist publicly and our users really need it. So some examples of that would be, under housing, if you look at the home sale data, this is data that we get through a partnership that we entered with Zillow. They provide data to us and we create our own kind of block group level, so very granular aggregations. So this is all data that's really available from Zillow. We have commercial and residential vacancy data. This is available, we update this on a quarterly basis, and this is data we license from a vendor called LISC. You'll see under education, there's great schools data, so you can put, we license data from great schools, so you can put the schools on the map and then be able to kind of color code them based on their proficiency, so you can easily see the higher and lower performing schools, in the area. So you'll see that there's licensed data available in here. And then I would also just highlight, we've gotten more in the business of creating data as well, when it doesn't exist otherwise. And it's part of what makes PolicyMap uniquely valuable. An example of data that we are creating, we've almost finished, is that is relevant to the CDFI industry for sure, is data around housing quality that we started a partnership with the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia's Community Development Department a few years ago to look at the topic of housing quality, just given that that's an area that we get asked questions about frequently, and there just isn't good national data that gives an idea of the scope and the needs around housing quality across the country, both in urban and rural areas. And so in conversations with the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, we embarked upon a project with them that is resulting in some publications, but also some nationwide census tract, so basically neighborhood level data around housing quality to give an idea, an estimate, the census tract level of how much investment is needed in an area to bring housing up to kind of a standard. And so for those of you, especially working in kind of older areas where the housing stock is older and housing quality is a big concern, that new data at the census tract level, which will be coming out and available on PolicyMap soon, will probably be of interest. So that's an idea of some of the kind of unique data that we create that's also in here as well. Before I turn it over to Phil, I would just highlight, again, if I give you trial access, you can see the full scope of data that's available in these menus. But some of the data that you might find particularly of interest is the federal guidelines menu, which Phil will show you. But also, under lending, you'll see CDFI. This is data from the CDFI fund from the CIS database around CDFI investments that we just updated recently, new market tax credit investments, CDFI locations, bank branch, credit union branches. So I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of trying to show you all the data that would be of interest, but yeah, at this point, I think I'll cut myself off and turn it over to Phil to show you the new market tax credit example. And again, I just would remind you to please type in any questions as you have them so that we can address them as it makes sense.
Thanks, Kristen. So for our session, we're just really going to talk about the data loader itself, what you can upload, and then really what happens when the data is in PolicyMap and what you can do with it. And that's probably one of the biggest use and tools of PolicyMap for our CDFI users. So the data loader itself is pretty straightforward. I sometimes call it probably the easiest feature within PolicyMap because setting up the data set on PolicyMap is the easiest part. You're simply walking through the steps, everything from giving it a custom name, how you want to share it. Myself only allows just your account and your access to be able to share this particular data set. If you choose to share it with other users, either within your organization or publicly, where Kristen will show you how you can do that as well. This has a very unique ability for you to use your data sets with other users at the same time. Shape's pretty basic. They do mimic the ones that are in PolicyMap. And then from there, you are finding the file that you're going to upload. Apologize, I have a lot of files here. And then from there, you'll go through the steps of uploading a spreadsheet of data. So the only thing that we require in a spreadsheet for the data loader to work is the street address, city and state, or the zip code. So in this example, we just have the street address, city, and zip code, and that's all we need for the file to work. Other than that, click next, and you go through the process of our system geocoding, or basically finding where the points are for the address, and then rebuilding your spreadsheet into this interface here. So this is all my addresses that I uploaded. And then from there, once we click save, now we have our spreadsheet of addresses into a mapping interface that I can see now where they are on the map. And at the same time, I can zoom in, I can interact with a point, and see all the information for that point. So the process of uploading a spreadsheet of PolicyMap into PolicyMap is one of the easiest functions within the tool. Once it's in PolicyMap, really is the reason why you want to use or try to use this tool, and that is taking your data set to the maps page or any of the other features that are in PolicyMap. And then from here, we can now visualize your addresses alongside all the other types of data that's in the tool. So we can zoom into Boston a little bit here. And then once we're in Boston, we can start overlaying data on top of the map, including, of course, the federal guidelines for new markets. So if you want to find out of your addresses that are in the Boston area, which ones are in areas that are considered eligible for new markets, this layer will basically show up, give you a map. Let me just remove some of this information. You can have a cleaner map here. But this will give you a clean map that basically shows of all your sites that are in the Boston area, which ones are in new markets, so you can individually see the points if you wanted to. So the easiest side of this is you can make a visual map that represents your investments or portfolio in areas that are eligible for new markets. But what you probably would then also want to do is just as a simple process of just downloading that file into an Excel spreadsheet of all your addresses and figuring out which ones of your addresses are in new markets or not. And so that's using the other feature in PolicyMap, which is the download function. So downloading data in PolicyMap allows you to do just that. In this case, it actually combines the data set you just uploaded using the data loader with the data layer that we have on the map, which is new markets. So now we're going to download our data set that we uploaded and combine it with the new markets data layer. We have to choose the area you want to download for. You can be very large and download for the entire state, or you can be very small and just download for the city or so. So we'll do Massachusetts as a whole. New markets is based on census tracts, so we don't need to change this, but if you download other types of data, you can download data at various geographies, like zip codes, counties, even cities and metros. So in this example, then this is going to tell you exactly what we're trying to download. Again, this is the new markets eligibility data for the current year using our data set we just uploaded by census tracts for the state of Massachusetts. So this file will be sent to you via email, and then when you do receive the file, you'll get your spreadsheet, and then from here is the list of all my addresses. And of course, of the addresses, in this example, we have 283 addresses that were geocoded and found, and of those addresses, 151 were in eligible tracts versus the other side. So this is a very quick, and you can see how easy it is for you to take a spreadsheet of your portfolio and determine in a very large sense which ones of your addresses are eligible. So it's not just new markets eligibility. So you can combine that query and that download function with any of the other variables related to markets. So if you want to find out which ones are in income criteria, the poverty criteria, the unemployment criteria, or just any of the other high distress indicators, SBC hub zones, medically underserved, brownfield sites, and such. And of course, it's not just new markets. There is a variety of other federal programs that are available as well, including the opportunity zones. So again, you can do that same process of uploading your spreadsheet of addresses, loading the layer for opportunity zones, and doing the download. And now you'll have the exact same spreadsheet of all your addresses that you uploaded, but now it's going to identify which one of those census tracts are in an opportunity zone or not. And then I'm sure Kristen will talk about it, but we do have a layer that we've realized many users need, which is the combined eligibility layers of new markets and opportunity zones. So in this example, same thing, you can actually download a spreadsheet. It'll tell you either if the address is in just new markets, in just opportunity zones, or even a combination of both. So a very easy way to combine those two particular types of data sets together. And this can be done for any of the data sets you upload. Yeah, other than that, there are some other additional features if you wanted to combine with your point data set, and that's the ability for you to make your own boundaries. A lot of times you are needed to make an assessment area, which is generally a grouping of geographies of census tracts. So we call those boundaries custom regions within PolicyMap, and they're available on the bottom of the map, as you see here. If you click on Create, there's 3 unique ways to make a custom region. The draw feature is just that. You can simply just draw on top of the map, and the assemble custom region is the ability for you to take census tracts and simply click onto the map and identify each tracts. So the map will load for us, load census tracts in this example, and then we're just clicking onto the map. If you have a lot of tracks, you have a lot of clicks ahead of you. But once you're done, have the ability to give it a custom name, And then just like downloading data for an entire city, an entire state, you can just download data for your assessment area you create using the custom region. All right, so those are the main tools that are mainly used by our users in the new markets and CDFI functions. There's plenty of data. There's many ways to export maps that you're going to be able to, that you can use within your presentation and your applications. But the two main tools really is the ability to upload data, download data for that data set you've uploaded, and then of course the ability to draw boundaries on the map. So the other feature that Kristen just wanted to mention real quick is, of course, the ability to export these maps. So if you wanted to or needed to take this particular map and put it into your application, we have a very simple export function, and it's just a print icon on the very top here. So there's a couple of different share features. We'll go through that then. The print function will do just that. It'll give you a chance to center the map in here, zoom in if you need to get a little localized to the given area. Again, all your points are still here. Then the left-hand side here gives you a little bit of customization, including things like making the font larger and smaller, changing the orientation. So Boston, in our example, is very vertical. And so this allows us to contain more of the given area within the map area. How you want to export it, you can give it a custom name. So if you are working on a program or a project, this allows you to do just that. Give it a title, add some context to the map if you wanted to. And then save it as a PDF or a PNG.
Thank you, Phil, for going over that. So now I thought I would show another way that CDFIs tend to use PolicyMap, which is to look at potential projects, and think about your target market and how it's used for, beyond new market tax credit applications, grant applications, but in terms of being strategic with your lending. So let me just pull up as an example the organization we grew out of, Reinvestment Fund. I'll just show their investment data as a quick example, because I want to highlight a difference between, as Phil showed, you can upload your own portfolio in about 1 minute on your own using the data loader, but there's also some additional kind of advanced functionality when our data team loads it for you that most CDFIs choose to take advantage of. So I'm just going to remove the underlying data so you can just see the investment data, and I'll just stay focused here on Philadelphia. So you can see this is Reinvestment Fund investments, and then the additional functionality that is available, our data team can create filters on it for you. So this allows you, just depending on which fields of data you have available, fields of information you have related to your projects or potential projects, we can create these filters. So we can, filter out those projects that, closed in 2019 or in 2018. You can filter out by year. In this case, so you see now a smaller subset of points, so you can see where investments have been targeted, year by year. You can also, in this case, Reinvestment Fund opted to have a filter as well on project type. So if they want to see where all of the early childhood education loans that they've made to date have been in Philadelphia, you can filter those out. You can also cross-filter. So if you wanted to see, for example, where just where the early childhood education loans were that were closed in 2019, for example, you can apply a second filter on top. And then you can also do kind of color coding. So you can see with new market tax credits, they wanted to be able to see just kind of yes and no, which were new market tax credit projects and which aren't. And then there's also the color code option. So now they can visually see which of these, the orange ones were new market tax credits and the purple ones are not. And so these filtering options are available if our data team loads your investments for you. And in addition to looking at your portfolio or a potential portfolio in bulk, in terms of uploading a whole spreadsheet, you can also kind of obviously, this is a zoom location bar, which we've been using just to kind of zoom into a city, but you can also use it to zoom into a zip code or, county, a state, census tract, any of these areas. But you can also type in an address. So let's say I'm considering a potential investment at 5702 Avenue in Philadelphia. I can type in my address and then find the address on the map. So this is a way to kind of look at addresses individually. So now I can look at, this potential property or investment, in relation to the other, where my other portfolio is to date. And then I can also start layering data, around this location. So some of the other data that CDFIs tend to look at besides the federal guidelines data would be some of the demographics, just, say simply if you wanted to look at race and ethnicity, underneath the, and see what the kind of racial and ethnic makeup is in the area where this potential project is. I can just quickly, put that layer underneath and see that this is a really predominantly Black area. And then you can see there's other pockets of more diversity in other areas, and just start looking at the different demographic and income data, housing data, cost burdens, that type of thing. You can also layer other point data on the map. So while there's can only be one layer, you can, look at, say, where other nonprofits and nonprofit locations are in the area, that might be working in areas related to what you're working on. So now if I layer nonprofit locations on the map, you can see that these squares are all nonprofits. So if I click on one, I'll see information about it. And then you can, filter these out by if you want to see any nonprofits that are currently working on health in the area or, housing. You can look for a particular type of category and identify some potential partners, you might want to work with in your work in a particular area. You can also layer on, say, library locations, school locations, as I mentioned. We have the Great Schools data. We also have a wealth of other school-related data sets, Head Start locations, that type of thing. And as well as I mentioned, the health tab, you can see where hospital locations, where the health infrastructure is in relation to that potential project. And then one, other big area that CDFIs use PolicyMap for in terms of data is, healthy food access. Obviously, there's the HFFI initiative, which a lot of CDFIs partake in, and you'll see a lot of data related to healthy food access in here. So you'll see under health, there's both the USDA food access layers as well as the limited supermarket access analysis data. This is data that the policy team at our kind of former parent organization, Reinvestment Fund, created around to identify areas that have limited supermarket access. And happy to answer more questions about this data, but just kind of know that this is available, and this is a really kind of key use for CDFIs as well, who are interested in focusing on that issue. And you'll see under the point data that you can also put grocery retail locations on the map, as well as farmers markets, to kind of see where, let me just remove some of the other data on here just to show you kind of how this works. So if you were considering a potential, say, healthy food retail investment right here, you might want to, let me just put that grocery retail locations on the map, and then you can filter, color code these by the type. And so this is going to help you see whether, what type of access there is. You can see here, there's the black squares are dollar stores, right? So that's not going to be necessarily ideal healthy food access. These green squares are kind of superettes, which would probably be more limited healthy food access. You can see a conventional full-scale supermarket down here. So you can layer this on in the farmers markets locations, as well as, again, these other layers such as the USDA food access indicators and the limited supermarket access layers here. So if I put, say, the limited supermarket access data on the map, you can see that this potential project is in a LSA area. So there does seem to be a need for some healthy food access kind of intervention. So there's a lot of other layers in kind of community resources and assets that you can put on the map when considering, a potential project. You can also then, I'll show you the custom region. If you want to just quickly get an overview of the community in that area around the potential project, you can go down to create, again, which Phil showed you, and we can create a radius region kind of around this location. So I'll just click on the map here. You can set which radius you want. I'll do a half-mile radius, around this potential project. We'll call it potential supermarket investment. You give it a name, you can give it a description, and now you can do kind of a number of things with this, but one of which is to generate what we call a community profile report, which will just give you kind of a quick overview of the area. So when I click on this icon, I can change the color and the transparency of this custom region, but I can also, I'm just going to show you, you can here get report. And then the community profile report is essentially meant to provide some of the kind of most frequently asked for data points for an area. So we find, CDFIs and nonprofits and stuff, tend to use it a lot because it provides, up-to-date aggregated data for an area. They're giving you a quick overview of things like demographics and how, racial and ethnic makeup are changing, how that, what the age makeup in an area is, what the, household income levels are like, an overview of the housing stock, vacancy levels, that type of thing. So here you can see it brought us to a reports menu where the 4 different reports we have available are here. So I'm just going to go ahead and generate the report. And you'll see this is, with kind of an easy click, you're now able to get an overview of what this, area around the potential project, what the composition of it is like. So this is, showing you population trends. So you can see in this area, populations declined about 11.5% since 2000 versus Philadelphia as a whole has seen an increase in population. So you're focused on an area that's seeing a decline in population. And then you see the racial and ethnic makeup as compared to the state, overview of the age distribution. So we can see here, almost 40% of the people in the half-mile radius are under the age of 18. So extraordinarily high youth population. So something you might, consider in the investment that you're looking to make in the area. Household income or households by income level, again, seeing the comparison to the county and the state. So you have some benchmarking that helps, then family and household types for the area and how that compares to the county and the state. Overview of the housing stock. Here you can see this area is around 74% single family attached homes, so row houses, about 12% units in small apartment buildings, et cetera. And you see how home ownership's around 50%. Commercial and residential vacancy. Again, this is data we update quarterly, so you see how that is changing and how it compares to the county and to the state. And then some information about employment, kind of giving you a quick snapshot of which industries might be over or underrepresented in the area. So you can quickly see that within the half-mile radius, healthcare and social assistance is extremely high in terms of the industry that people in the area are working in. And then there's some information about crime at the city and county level. So that's just a quick preview of what the community profile report looks like. So though it's really tabular in format and doesn't have as many of the graphs, the new graphs and stuff that are new reports like the community health report has, this gets used a lot by CDFIs for to bring information to, your loan committee about a potential project in the area, to get information quickly for a proposal that you need to get in, that type of thing. So I just wanted to share that as a quick example. And then, in addition to assessing potential projects using PolicyMap and the features that are here, I'll just show another quick example of how Reinvestment Fund also uses it, which, we can create, in addition to loading your portfolio data, we can also create like a layer showing your target market, and then your staff can use this easily. If you have particular types of areas that you're looking to focus on, then you can create a layer such as this. So you can see this is a separate, Reinvestment Fund opted to have this be in a separate kind of interactive tool, but you can also have this data incorporated into your PolicyMap account. But you can see here, this is, in this case, the purple areas are their target market areas according to the criteria that they wanted the layer created. And so now if you type in an address, then we can look at, again, if we just go to that address that I typed in previously. Then you'll be able to see, your lending staff can see, quickly whether an address is in a target market. And then you can see that Reinvestment Fund wanted to have a separate tab here showing supporting information. So if I'm, a lending staff and I quickly look up this address, I can see not only is it in a target market area, but I see kind of other factors that we are looking to consider in our loans, and it's all just right here in this tab. So this is something that we can create for the CDFI, for your CDFI, if you want to have a layer or a tool to use internally that can really be focused specifically on your target market and can be used by the lending staff. And then you see that this also, with these mapping tools, which I'll show you, generally organizations have us create these so that you can have it be public facing, and I'll show you an example of that. But you can also, when you click on new map, you'll see that you can provide other data here as well. So you can see Reinvestment Fund includes some target markets. They have a layer showing their states that they are looking to work in, CDFI program eligibility. So you have all of these kind of relevant CDFI eligibility layers available in this tool. So you can just change the data that's here, additional supporting information. So they have the opportunity zone layer, persistent poverty counties. You can also overlay census tracts, counties and states. So yes, that's kind of what's available with these as well. And I would just encourage people, again, if you have questions, we'd love to answer lots of questions. So please feel free to type them into the control panel as you have them. So with that, I think just looking at the time, I'll show you a quick example or two of how CDFIs tend to use PolicyMap to interact with the public and to be able to show your work and potentially give a sense of the impact that you might be having in an area and the scope of what you're doing. So the most common way that organizations do that is through embedding an interactive mapping tool into your website. So we have many examples of these. One that you might be familiar with is a CDFI coverage map that your CDFI might have contributed data to the OFN for. This is a interactive mapping tool on OFN's site that's meant to show CDFI coverage. And they went the route of providing a whole lot of data in the tool, probably more than most organizations do, but this is an example you might be very familiar with. So again, if I click on new map, see a lot of different types of data that the OFN wanted to make available in here. But then, I'll show you just maybe a few examples of specific CDFIs or organizations that have these on their website. So this is an example, Chicago Community Loan Fund. This is pretty common use, which is to show, your portfolio really. So they've provided a certain amount of context that they want people that come to this page to see, and they have the kind of target area here that they're serving. And then you see when you click on New Map that they provided a certain amount of data, including their lending data here, right? So we can put CCLF's loans on the map. You can either leave this orange, like their target area on the map, or you can remove it. And then you see that filtering capability that we were talking about with Reinvestment Fund's portfolio is available in the publicly facing tool as well. So if we wanted to filter out let's go to loan purpose, just the commercial real estate loans, we can filter those out, etc. And then anyone who comes to this site can then also layer on, look at in terms of demographics and low-income populations, different real estate indicators, healthy food access areas, start really looking at which types of areas you're doing which types of loans in, and that type of thing. And they also included some new market tax credit data in theirs as well. So that's a quick example of how CDFIs, a lot of CDFIs will tend to go this route. And then I would just show as a second quick example, this isn't a CDFI, but a lot of state housing finance agencies use PolicyMap in similar ways as CDFIs. And I just think that this tool is pretty, I think that they did it in a really nice way. So I'll show it as an example. But they just recently had us create this tool for them so that they can map their data both at an address level, and then you can see we've done aggregations of their data, which is something that's easy for us to do. So in this case, we have created zip code level data showing the number of mortgages they've done in by zip code. And then also you can drill down to a census tract, and as well as these, they really interact a lot with legislative district reps and congressional district reps doing kind of advocacy and showing where they're, how much work they've done in various district areas. So we've aggregated their portfolio basically to these different geographies. And again, if I kind of zoom in just to say Providence, you should then see the census tract level data as well. So now we're seeing, which by census tract where they've done the most, in this case, the mortgages. And then when you click on New Map, you'll see a mix of data from PolicyMap, and then we have a lot of their different program data in here. And then there's even a custom report that they've created, which I can send the link out, but these are different examples, which allows people using the tool to be able to see in a particular area how much work the organization has done, as well as interesting supplementary data about that area. Sorry, I'm just taking a moment to look at the questions. Yeah, so there's a few questions here, which I was just touching on. I must have known that these questions were being asked, but one is about the possibilities for making data layers to use internally in your organizations. And so I think that what I was just describing kind of answers that. So we can create these layers. In this case, Rhode Island Housing wanted to make this data available publicly in this tool, but we also frequently, we can create these aggregated layers for use just in your PolicyMap account as well. So, you can have your internal PolicyMap use and then your external PolicyMap use, and you can choose which data we create for you you want available in each. But I think the Rhode Island Housing example here and the Reinvestment Fund investment example give you some idea of the point data and how we can load it, as well as how we can create aggregations for you as well. So I don't know if I clicked on the map here. Yes, but again, you'll see here now same with all the other PolicyMap data, you're seeing the number, in this particular census tract for this data layer. And then I'm seeing another question, are users able to create custom reports showing only user specified data as opposed to the standard report? And yes, we create custom reports. I can show you, the easiest thing is to show you the Rhode Island housing example here. So they had us create a custom report for them, which they have opted to make available publicly. So if we click on an area, you'll see in this bubble that there's an option to create a report for either the state Senate district, state House district, the city that it's in, because they, instead of creating reports in-house and spending a lot of time, they wanted us to just create a report that could be available and generatable for anybody and would be updated without them having to update it. So if I click on here, you'll see that this is a report for State Senate District 5 in Rhode Island. And these are the different categories that the Rhode Island Housing wanted to include. And so we worked with them on what they wanted to be incorporated into this report. And it starts, as many of our kind of custom reports do, with a section showing an overview of their work in this district. So you can see total active loans in the district, aggregate loan amount, and then some of the key, other programs and the number, just basically aggregations of their different program data in the district. And this is downloadable. You see the download sign here. And then after following the section showing their data, they have chosen some select supplementary information, which is all available already in PolicyMap, and just worked with our data team member on what they wanted to show in here. So you can see this is a population and how that compare in the area, how it compares to the state. Population change looks like declining population here, and you can see it. This is kind of an example of, now we have, compared to the community profile report, the reports that we create now have much more updated graphics. We have kind of much nicer looking reports available than the community profile one I showed you. So you can see here they wanted to show racial and ethnic makeup, and then some, show some supplementary housing data showing housing conditions and housing needs in the community. So, the homes by year built and how that's changing and how it compares to the state. Overview of the housing stock and how that's changing, some information about housing costs. We have a lot of data related to cost burdens and that type of thing in the tool. So they opted to include this as well. And these can be as long or as short as you want them to be. I know in this case with Rhode Island Housing, since they want district reps to actually pay attention to it, they made it, on the shorter side. But we definitely, our data team can work with you in deciding which length and which data makes sense given your objectives. So I'm just looking, looks like, I'm just checking out, we have another question. So it's just, there's a clarifying question around the customized report, so like the Rhode Island Housing report and how it works in terms of, whether it's something we have where there would be meetings and conversations with the data team at PolicyMap or something you do from the website. So to answer that question, the custom report that I showed you for Rhode Island Housing is something that you would have to have meetings with our data team member to create. So it's not something that you would create on your own. So we don't currently have the ability to for you to create your own report in terms of deciding what you want to have in it on your own, hopefully one day. But for now, it would be something that you'd work with our data team on. And in terms of as we wrap up, in terms of how CDFIs subscribe, so we work on if you haven't had a subscription with PolicyMap before, we work on a subscription basis. And so, the most frequent subscription level that CDFIs use is what we call a premium subscription, which gives you access to the tool for up to 10 users. So you just provide their names and email addresses and we get that set up. And that also gives you access to all the data and all of the features and everything in the tool for the 10 users. And it also includes a certain amount of custom data loading on our end. So the most frequent use for CDFIs would be us loading your portfolio data and creating the filters and everything. But you could also, yes, have us do aggregations, that type of thing. And it can also include a public facing tool for your website if you're interested. So that's available, and that's $5,400 annually. And then there's also kind of a lesser version that excludes some of the data and features in the tool and doesn't include any custom data loading or the mapping tool for your website, and that's $2,200 annually. And then, as I mentioned at the start of the webinar, we currently, in advance of the platform upgrade, and the new platform that we have coming up, we are offering a discount where, basically if your CDFI were to subscribe by October 15th, then we'd provide 15 months of access instead of the 12 months. So you would get a subscription all the way through 2020 for the price of just 1 year. As well as access to the new platform at this year's prices, which is a good deal. So that's available, and I'm happy to answer or work with any CDFIs who are interested in that. And I'm also happy to set up any overview sessions where we can get more in depth and answer more specific questions your organization might have. If you want to reach out to me at the after the webinar, then we can get you set up with that, as well as a quick trial period if you want, and that type of thing. So I'm not seeing any other questions at this time, and it's also we're about done with the hour. So thank you so much for joining. Let me just close with putting the my email back up on the screen. Here we go. So there you go. So if you can respond just to the webinar, info@policymap.com. We get all those emails, so you're always welcome to email there. But if you want to reach out to me directly, there's my email address and my phone number. So you can just feel free to do that, and I'm happy to chat with you more specifically about your CDFI. But thank you so much for your time today. I greatly appreciate you taking an hour out of your day, and I look forward to being in touch with you. Have a wonderful day.